Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real Scoop Live, where we are live on YouTube.
Hey, it finally happened.
It finally happened. It's Stacee and the boys, Matt and Brett, and they're going to talk to you today about spring openings. Take it away, guys.
Hello, everybody. Matt,
Hello.
say
Hello.
hi. There it is.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another YouTube Live from Real Scoop Live.
So we're gonna jump right in. Again, a little pool humor. Jump right in. Get your feet wet. It's all coming together.
We're just trying to make a splash in the industry.
Opening season is upon us. A lot of people are actually already pulling covers back and seeing what kind of hopefully beautiful, pristine water they're coming into, or I hope not ungodly travesties when they pull the cover back that they're going to have to remedy. So we're going to throw some stuff out at you today that could potentially help you in any one of those situations. Initially, when you first pull the cover back, what you're looking at is a direct reflection of your closing process, your winterization, what kind of chemical treatments you did at the end of the season, and where you got to go from here. But one thing a lot of folks don't think about, if you're in areas of the country where antifreeze is applied to the lines, that antifreeze is just hanging out in the lines. Now, hopefully, if you start your system and you backwash to waste, you're going to get that puff of pink or blue or whatever color antifreeze you're playing with into the backwash line so that it isn't going directly into the pool. But the antifreeze that's hanging out in the lines on the pressure side, when you turn that system on and start firing it up, it's just pushing that antifreeze directly into the pool, which may not seem like a big deal because it's a minute amount, hopefully only a couple gallons. There are different people out there that really go hog wild with antifreeze, so you could be putting a lot more in the water. In general, they're generally not terribly toxic. It's a drop in the ocean if you think about it, but you're also putting a boatload of chlorine demand directly into the water. Most antifreezes are a blend of propylene glycol and glycerin, both of which can cause stress or extra workload on your chlorine. So instead of what you got,
grime.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of doing what instead of your chlorine doing what you actually want it to do, which is break down junk in the water, potentially kill critters that are in there, it's getting distracted trying to break down and oxidize out a lot of the propylene glycol and glycerin. So if you actually use enzyme products at the start of the season before you really slam it with liquid chlorine or anything like that, it can actually help to break down the organic components so that your chlorine isn't distracted quite as much and you aren't having to use quite as much to get it out of the water. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you are in one of those areas where antifreeze is used readily. There's only a couple or a handful of places that I know that actually uses salt antifreeze, which is essentially just a brine that you put in the water. That's kind of a neat one because if you push it forward into the pool, you're actually just putting a little bit of extra salt in the water and you're not putting all that extra demand in there. But yeah, so that's a big little asterisk right there to be aware of moving forward when you're pulling these covers back. I think Matt's going to jump into if you're lucky and the pool's actually clear when you pull the cover back. So let's actually, if you have a cover, if you don't, you might be in for a lot more fun than anyone else.
And it also has a big there's a big difference between closing a pool at the end of August or right after Labor Day compared to closing it in November. And also when you open it, if you're opening pools now when the water's in its 50s, you're generally going to have a clear pool. Where if you wait to the weekend before Memorial Day or the weekend before July 4th, which we've heard of people doing that, it's most likely going to be a swamp. So it really comes down to when are you opening? When did you close it? How did you close it? Did you close it correctly? What kind of products did you use to close it? Was it balanced to begin with? And also how cold was the winter? How warm was the winter? How much rain you got? If it's a drought like where we are or where I am in Central Texas, then you probably didn't get much rain. Whereas a lot of other places, i.e., Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, the Northeast, they got a ton of rain and a ton of snow, and it's still cold. We just heard reports this week, and we're talking on 4/22 of snow in the upper Midwest and in the Northeast in the middle of April. Right now we should be having April showers so they can have May flowers, not April snow, so that everything gets pushed back. Because we all know that right now there's about to be kind of like a proverbial spigot turned on where everyone's going to go from, geez, it's snowing, I don't want to think about my pool, to holy cow, it's 85 degrees and I want to go swimming. So we're here to talk about the opening part of this to make things so much easier for everybody. And that's what Brett first started talking about with the enzymes, is that if you're a DIY or DIY person, and you're pulling your cover back, you need to use something like Enzyme Pro. I mean, it's an API product, yes, but it's very strong, and it helps to break down that propylene glycol and the glycerin, so that way you don't have issues with having to clean not only your filter, but your tile line, the inside of your skimmer, all that stuff, because of the oxidized glycerin. So that also makes your, whatever kind of sanitizer or oxidizer that you're using much more efficient. So let's talk about openings. Typically, depending on how it was closed or when you open it, you're going to have one of three different pools, right? You're going to have a clear pool, or you're going to have a cloudy pool, or you're going to have a green pool, i.e. green/black/brown/swamp, right? So
it's so thick you can walk on it.
Yes. That's funny, because when people call us and they say, hey, I'm opening this pool and it's green and nasty, they say, well, is it green and nasty where you can see the bottom, green and nasty where you can see the stairs, or green and nasty where you could walk on it, right? So, and that's really meant to find out, well, how much chlorine are you going to need to put in there to get rid of how nasty that pool is? So that's something that we'll cover when we talk about the swamp pools. Basically, for a clean pool, when you're opening it early enough, or if the water's still beautiful, as long as it's not a biguanide pool, and we need to really talk about that a little bit. If it's a biguanide pool, meaning if it's Baquasil, Soft Swim, or whatever kind of other biguanide products you may be using, you need to follow the biguanide procedures for opening, because they don't play well with most other products. You have to use a biguanide-based system to care for the pool on a weekly basis, but also to open the pool. So let's get that out of the way. So what we're talking about is every other pool. Every other pool, if it's clear, the easiest and safest way to take care of that water is to throw in a maintenance dose of Revive or Revive Weekly, and it's 3 ounces per 12,000 gallons, or an ounce per 4,000 gallons. You pour it right into the skimmer, right in front of a jet with the pump running. Then you want to balance the water, or you can balance the water and then use Revive, either way. And once you do that, you throw in Easy Pool, which is typically it's a pound per 10,000 gallons. So the typical 5-pound Easy Pool will open 25,000 gallons, and you literally run the pump for 48 hours, check the pressure, clean the filter if you need it, and you're off to the races. I mean, it's that easy. So balancing, Revive maintenance dose, and then Easy Pool at a rate of a pound per 10,000 gallons. Then clean your filter as needed. So that's easy way to do a clear pool. And frankly, if you're doing it yourself, you can open that pool as far as the chemical side in 5 minutes or so. That's about it. No big deal. If you're doing it on a service route, that also makes it so that when you're going to do the pools, the chemical part of the opening doesn't take up much of your time. So that's a lot of benefits to doing that. It's also benefits for opening the pool early. Because it's clear, it takes less to open it. And who pays tens of thousands of dollars for a pool that has a cover on it for half the year or more? I mean, the pool is there because it's beautiful. Get that thing open and enjoy it. You never know when it's going to be 85 one day and 65 the next day. But when it's 85, it's okay to jump in a pool that's 65 and swim around. And you know that your kids are going to be swimming in there. I had a call from a friend of mine in Connecticut who has a guy that opened his pool 2 weekends ago, and even though the water was 52, his kids were swimming last week, right? And so, I mean, kids are crazy. Too. Yeah. But that's the thing, is that when I was growing up, I used to swim in like Lake Superior when I was 10 and 12. I mean, you don't do that when it's April and it's 58-degree water, unless you're a kid. Then you love it, right?
Their temperature receptors haven't turned on yet.
No. So what about a cloudy pool, Brett? How is opening a cloudy pool different than opening a clear pool?
Well, it can affect you a couple different ways. So just like Matt said previously, check your water balance first, because if your water balance is off, that can actually throw off the clarity in the water as well, and correct any of those issues as well. You can use the same product Matt was talking about, Revive, to help clear cloudy water as well, because Revive's an indiscriminate water cleaner. It'll actually go after phosphates, scaling carbonates, stray metals, and pretty much anything in the water that's causing clarity issues. Matt was making the little signal for it's tickling the water molecule to drop all the junk down to the bottom.
That's right.
So you can do it two different ways. If you, for the most pronounced result, when you're actually going to go that moment the next day, if you spray Revive over the surface, 1 quart, if it's particularly cloudy, 1 quart will cover about 24,000 gallons. Spray it over the surface, shut your pump off, let it drop everything down to the bottom over the course of, depending on the water temperature, 1 to 3 days. Because if it's still stupid cold, it can take a while, because nothing likes to move real fast when it's cold. Vacuum it to waste, and you're actually throwing away all of that junk that the Revive dropped out, not just putting it back into solution, not just making it a problem for another day. You're actually physically removing it from the water, which is a good jumping off point for the rest of the season, because if you get all that junk out at the beginning, it's a lot less potential for problems down the road. Yeah. If you're running a cartridge filter and you don't have the ability to vacuum to waste, you can do it more gradual and do like a Revive weekly dose of 4 ounces per 10,000 gallons, or cut back off a little bit of the quart per 24,000 and do it more gradual, and it will slowly pull it out over time. That way you don't have to take the cartridge out and clean it quite as quickly, but it is going to pull that stuff out through the filter that way. So keep an eye on your filter pressures, because depending on how bad the contaminant load is in the water, it can make the pressures jump up just in a couple days, to the point where you might have to pull the cartridge out because it's actually working for you. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a cloudy situation right there. Then you'd want to follow up with your normal oxidation routine. So if you're using Easy Pool, start with your double dose of Easy Pool. So 1 pound per 5,000 gallons, just like Matt said. It's the same dosage if you're clear or if you're cloudy.
Oh, you know what? I said 1 pound per 10,000, but you're right. It's 1 pound per 5,000. My bad. 5-pounder treats 25,000 gallons.
Technically, if you're already clear, you might be able to get away with the 1 pound per.
Well, that's true. That's true. But
the program dose wise, yeah.
Program dose for opening and closing is the same dose. It's 1 pound per 5,000 gallons. So
yep.
To be clear and to keep that going, so there's no confusion, it is 1 pound per 5,000 gallons. And the thing about it is that because it's clear, you may think, well, it's clear. But we all know that people will say, well, my water's clear. Why is my heater going out, right? Well, just because it's clear doesn't mean it's oxidized or clean or healthy. So
because your pH is so low and you dip your foot in, it comes out a skeleton foot.
Yeah. You see that ring down there? That used to be a dime. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's obviously a problem. So anyway, hopefully everyone gets what we're talking about that's watching this. But yeah, so we're talking about this because, in a sense, you can use liquid chlorine, you can use Cal Hypo, you can do all kinds of stuff to open the pool, but none of those contain the products that Easy Pool does that helps to not only get your water balanced and keep it balanced, but also to minimize any effects with staining, with scaling, with clarity issues, and also oxygenates the water to make that water feel nice to swimmers, more healthy, less chlorine needed, less problems with the environment. And then we can also wrap up any kind of little bits of algae and give you an algistat style thing, that helps to keep algae from growing in your pool for an extended period of time. So.
One neat thing about everything we've talked about today is its resistance to high levels of chlorine. Mm-hmm. Revive is good in chlorine up to about 25-30 parts per million. Easy Pool, obliterate the pool with chlorine, it's still going to perform for you. And then Enzyme Pro puts up with a higher level of chlorine than most traditional enzymes. That really helps, especially if you're starting a season out and you don't want to have to do multiple service runs to a pool. Because if you've got to, and I might be walking on what Matt's going to talk about here. Actually, Matt, why don't you talk about if you come into a swamp?
Okay. All right. Well, I was enthralled. You could kept on going. So we talked about a clear issue. You could literally get that done in about 5 minutes. With a cloudiness issue and a cartridge filter, you can use the Revive weekly and let the homeowner clean the filter when it needs it. Or you can use Revive and come back and vacuum. And the cool thing about the Revive is that once all that stuff goes to the floor, it stays there until either the pump kicks on for whatever reason, or until you come back. So if you want to spray Revive on a Monday, come back on Thursday or Friday or the next Monday, it'll all still be at the bottom. You just back it up when you get there. If you have a swamp, now here's where things change a little bit. A swamp needs more attention. And really what we were talking about earlier with the fact that, well, how green is it, or how black is it, or how brown is it, right? You have to consider that there are two different types of green. There's green and clear, like Mountain Dew green. And then there's green and cloudy that's kind of like grass green. I mean, you can tell that it's algae. And so we don't really want to do what I'm about to say if the water is clear but green tinted. Green tinted typically means oxidized copper. And again, here's another aspect to this. If it's purple, the purple is actually oxidized copper along with cyanuric acid. And when it gets together, it forms a purple haze or a purple stain or a purple cloud. If that's the case, then stop everything and throw in the not just the troubleshooting dose of Revive, which is at 24 or 32 ounces per 24,000 gallons, but double that. So in a pool that has green tinted water that looks like Mountain Dew or purple tinted water, you want to do a double dose of Revive, which is 2 bottles or half a gallon per 25,000 gallons, and let that settle and vacuum that all out. Now, there are other products on the market that will actually put all that stuff back into solution, and that's fine, because that way you can get that pool going and clear faster. But the problem is it's a Band-Aid. So if you can get something to actually pull that stuff out like Revive, that way you don't have to worry about someone calling and saying, well, you're here and it was clear, but now it's green again. What the heck? Come back. And then all the other stuff that goes along with that. So
I already had a couple calls on the purple at the bottom with excess cyanuric acid and copper and water. Yeah. So it's already happening.
Yeah. And without going too far down the rabbit hole, where if you watch some of our RSL
we are good at that, aren't we?
Those the RSL episodes are going down the rabbit hole. So without going too much into that, the amount of cyanuric acid has been proliferated in the last 5 to 8 years because of the style of tablets that have been sold to the masses. So even though they might be coming into your store, and your store meaning a professional pool and spa industry store, those tabs are different than the ones that a lot of people can get at mass merchants. And so the mass merchant ones typically don't take as long to dissolve. You use more of them, but then you're also putting in excess cyanuric acid. Also with the mass merchants, promoting dichlor as a shock product. A lot of people put in lots and lots of bags of dichlor. And as we know, dichlor has way more stabilizer than it has way more stabilizer than tablets.
About 45% of it.
Yeah. Cal Hypo and liquid chlorine has no stabilizer. So, I mean, that kind of all goes together. So that's why you're seeing some pools with purple that typically are the pools that have cyanuric acid above 150, 200, 300, stuff like that, and a degrading heater, or if they used a 90-day algicide or a copper-based algicide. So anyway, without going too far down the rabbit hole, on the RSL episodes, we actually talk about purple pools and green pools. So if you want to talk more about that, or if you want to hear more about that, go on to the YouTube channel. Search them out. It's all in there. We also talk about white water mold, pink slime, ammonia nitrates, all that other stuff. So anyway, okay. Back it up, right? As George Costanza says, beep, beep. Okay. Anyway, so a swamp pool, if you know that it's green, what we have to do is to determine how green it is. So if it's just green, green with a little green here and there, then it's just a typical shock. If it's green where you can see the steps but not the deep end, well, you probably want to double that shock.
What if you can hide a body in the deep end?
No.
We're not supposed to talk about that.
Don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. So there are times, I've been in the pool industry for a while now. I mean, you can tell, right? I'm actually 30, but this is gray because of all the calls I get. No, I'm just kidding.
You had biscuits and gravy today?
There have been times when I was a chemical specialist in the Midwest where people would open their pools to carcasses of dead animals, right? That kind of swamp is not what we're talking about now. If you have something like that, then follow the stuff on the bottom there that says, call us or text us at 877-274-7261. And we can talk about that, because you're going to need some Enzyme Pro
It's
a
a
lot of
process.
Ezyme Pro. It's nasty, right? And you may not even want to get in it when you're using your product. You might want to just drain it and clean it or move. But anyway, and I always say that just because you said, what if it's so green you can hide a body?
It's an extreme.
Yeah.
Well,
so if it's really green, like you could walk on it, then the initial dose of chlorine should be 4 times the initial dose. So what's a dose of chlorine of shock product? And we're talking about shock product is specifically sodium hypochlorite, which is liquid chlorine, or calcium hypochlorite, which is the powdered stuff. That should be 1 gallon per 10,000 gallons or 1 pound per 10,000 gallons. And it doesn't really matter if the cal hypo that you have says it's 65%, 68%, 73%, 78%. What you're talking about in there is literally a 1/10 of a pound difference. So consider that any one of those products or with the liquid chlorine, it's a gallon per 10,000 gallons or a pound per 10,000 gallons. So when I say if there's just a little green, well, that would be a gallon per 10,000 gallons. If it's green where you can't see the main drain, but you can see the stairs, then it's 2 gallons per 10,000 gallons. If it's so green that you could hide a carcass in there, well, then you want to start with at least 4 times. So it'd be 4 gallons per 10,000 gallons. And really
physically remove any organics that you can from the pool.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you're not going to have a good time.
At some points you might be blind vacuuming, right? It's like, it's so bad, but you know there's stuff on the bottom because maybe the cover broke, maybe it wasn't secured correctly, maybe you have a whole bunch of trees around you, maybe your pool's in a forest, whatever. You want to vacuum what you can to get it out of there, because the more stuff that's in the pool, the more chlorine you're going to need to get rid of it. So if you can get rid of that stuff to begin with, then the less chlorine you need and the faster it will clear, which is what we want, right? So essentially what's going to happen is that you put that chlorine in. Typically you'd want to do it at night if you can. If you can't, you can't. But the best way to get the longevity and the effectiveness of the chlorine into your pool is to do it when the sun is off the pool. So that's, just one of those, inside baseball things. Anyway, so if you do that, what's going to happen is that green, the black, or the brown cloud is going to turn into a grayish cloud or whitish cloud. Once that's done, then you turn the pump off, spray Revive over the top, with at least a quart per 24,000 gallons. Let everything fall to the floor. So now we're kind of just following what Brett said. Once everything's fall to the floor, you vac it to waste if you can. If you can't, then you want to turn the pump on, use Revive weekly, let your cartridge filter all the stuff out. Make sure to watch the pressure. Once all that's done, get the balance right. Throw in your 5 pounds of Easy Pool per 25,000 gallons, and that's it. Enjoy it. So
one thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years specifically, if you're adding chlorine to the water and it's really gnarly swampy and you don't get a color change, you haven't added enough.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just a quick rule of thumb, because it should be changing colors before you leave and lightening up. If it's not, you haven't added enough, and you could potentially be making much more combined chlorine in the water, which is going to make it harder for you to actually put enough chlorine in there to break that and actually get the water to turn. So it's always better to go a little heavier at the start, especially if you've got a really mean troubleshooting pool, than it is to undershoot, because you're just going to make more work for yourself in the long run.
Well, if you think about this in the context of, like, say, breakpoint chlorination, with breakpoint chlorination, if the formula says you need 10 gallons and you put in 9 gallons, that means you have to put in the 9 gallons again, along with even more. So instead of being 10 gallons this time, it might be 14 or 16 gallons. So in essence, what you did is you kind of wasted that first 9 gallons and the time, the energy, and all the money that goes into treating a pool, whether it's for breakpoint chlorination or for a swamp. So much to his point, if you're thinking that you're following the Real Scoop Live's recommendation of 4 gallons per 10,000 gallons, but you might think, well, I don't know, man. I mean, I can see tadpoles and mosquitoes and all
they
that
look fine. They're having a good time in there.
I mean, the 4 gallons per 10,000 may not do it. It's okay to cheat higher. It's okay to do 6, because the other thing too is that if you're a retailer and you have a homeowner coming into you and you specifically say to them 4 gallons per 10,000 gallons, they go do it. They come back and it didn't work.
And now you're the bad guy.
You're the bad guy, because now they have to do it again. So they have to buy all that chlorine again plus more. So, and just remember, if you're sitting there thinking, geez, 4 gallons per 10,000 gallons is a lot. It is a lot. But as soon as that chlorine goes into the pool, it's getting used up because there's so many organics in there. So you're never really going to have a super high chlorine reading if the water's a swamp, because it's going to be starting to get burned off right then. So you don't have to worry about someone having a 20 or 30 part per million chlorine in a pool for days and days, because that's not going to happen. It's going to
it'll be strong right after you add it, but
yeah.
it's getting used up just as fast as you're adding it.
Right. So okay, that's it. That's what we have to say about openings. And we thought this 10-minute thing was going to be 10 or 12 minutes, and it's a lot more, as is our, that's what we do.
We should have called it Real Scoop Rabbit Hole. Yeah.
So, all right, that's it. So that's it for openings. If you want to know any more, see us at apiwater.com. You can text or call us at 877-274-7261. Don't forget to share and like this video. And also, we have the same style of videos over on Facebook under Rick's Remedies. So if you go to Rick's Remedies or apiwater.com, you can get access to all that stuff. So we appreciate it so much. Thanks for listening. Hope you made it this far.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Bye.